Alright, let's try this one more fucking time. Welcome back to Wrestling Rants and Reviews. I am Big Mike, and this is ECW Forever. And why am I saying let's try this one more time? Well, this is my fourth take with hopefully no interruptions or distractions or technical difficulties. But anyways, you might be wondering, why are you doing an ECW video? Well, if you watched my wrestling history video earlier, you know that today is an anniversary for the very first ECW One Night Stand. And then, also, after I made that video, I went on TNA On Demand, and I watched Hardcore Justice. Not Disc 1, but Disc 2, which I didn't even know there was a Disc 2. So I guess that's the perk for having TNA On Demand, because there is a second disc, and it wasn't any matches. It was kind of like the Forever Hardcore documentary in a way. But it just wasn't as good as the Forever Hardcore documentary, that's for sure. But they had all the ECW originals that were taking part in Hardcore Justice, and they talked about the old company of ECW, and they talked about what it meant for them to be at Hardcore Justice. And that was last year on August the 8th. And that was 10 years after the fact of ECW. Now, ECW was resurrected by WWE, but it wasn't the same. But even to this day, even a year later, so 11 years later, when something happens with an ECW original, whether it's in an indie show or on TNA or even WWE, I don't know if there's any TNA, ECW originals have done WWE, I don't think. But when something really cool happens, they chant ECW, ECW. And after doing my day in wrestling history and knowing that today is an anniversary for One Night Stand, and then seeing what was going on Hardcore Justice just a year ago, got me thinking about ECW. It will never die. It's going to be around forever. And I think New Jack said it best in the Hardcore Justice documentary part. You know, it's like a tattoo. It doesn't matter how much you cover it up. The original is still there. And, you know, for all of you that weren't able to see the real ECW, because I know there's a lot of young guys out here, but then there's a lot of young guys in the YWC that have done their research. You know, but ECW was the shit. And I think that's why it'll never die. Like, I think if the WWE was to go defunct, I don't think it would ever die either. But for the caliber of ECW, what it was, for being as small as it was, for being like a cult following, it's still here. People still fucking remember it. And they treat it like it never left. You know, you don't hear people chanting WCW. Hell, I would, because I was a huge WCW mark, but you don't. You know, when you see Booker T, you know, doing whatever, or, you know, another, whoever, WCW, Scott Steiner or whatever, you know, you don't see them going WCW, WCW. You don't. You know, so ECW will always be in everyone's heart, at least all the major followers of ECW. It'll always be there. And I just think that's fucking great. You know, it makes me happy to be a wrestling fan again. And once I realized, you know, I know had never left, but after today, it just, you know, made me realize that ECW was fucking amazing. Now, I'm not a hardcore wrestling fan at all, and that's what people might think I'm hypocritical, but ECW wasn't just, let me bash you with fucking chairs, or let me hit you with shit. Mind you, they had those matches with New Jack, but everybody else, when they had hardcore matches, they implemented the instruments of violence, like the chairs or whatever. They weren't just whacking people, they weren't just throwing them. They used them as part of their moves, like Sandman used the Russian leg sweep with the Kento stick. You know, RVD the Van Terminator. Sabu used it to use just projectile himself. You know, they were implemented in moves. They weren't just used for the sake of being smacked with them. So that's how I liked ECW. You watch hardcore matches now, like, or watch his backyard tard bullshit. They're just hitting with each other thinking they're hardcore, but it's not being hardcore. You know, there's no psychology to it. There's no implementations of the weapons. They're just smacking each other with shit. But, I don't know. ECW was great. I remember it was getting bootlegged to me in like 96, 95. It was just being bootlegged and bootlegged. And I never seen it, and then all of a sudden it came on TNN later on, whatnot. But for the most part, I was just getting bootleg tapes. But, I just think ECW is forever. It's going to be forever. As long as we can keep sharing with our friends and people that don't know what ECW is, or don't remember what the real ECW was, not WWE ECW, then that's what we got to do. We got to share it, keep the memory alive, keep it going, because it damn was the shit. But I can't keep staying here and saying how awesome it was. I got top 10 or 10 moments in ECW that stood out in my mind when I got thinking about it, reminiscing about it today. I want to hear yours, so leave a comment or a video response. Let me know what you thought of ECW. Was it great? Did it suck? What are your top 5, 10 moments? Who was your favorite wrestlers in ECW? Before I get to the 10 things that I got, also, I remember I was going to continue saying ECW just wasn't hardcore. You had great cruiserweights. Psychosis, Tajiri, Juventud, Rey Mysterio. You had these guys, Mikey Whipwreck. You had a lot of these guys, these luchadors, that weren't even really hardcore as far as weapons goes, but they were hardcore because they were flying and jumping around and just doing amazing things. So you had really good wrestling as well. You had Malenko and Benoit, and Jericho was there as well, and Eddie. A lot of these guys were major players before they left and went to WCW. Then you had some of the best big guys in the business that were there too, like Bam Bam Bigelow and Mike Awesome. Putting together some great shit. RVD obviously was there, the Dudleys. There you go again. ECW may not have been the most popular, but if it wasn't for ECW, we might have certain superstars like the Dudleys. Because I think the Dudleys suck. And if they didn't have that big of a legacy in ECW, they would never have been major players in the WWE. There's people like that Tommy Dreamer. If it wasn't for ECW, if it wasn't for ECW, I don't think Stevie Richards would have a shot. I don't think a lot of these guys would have been taken serious, but because of ECW building them up and putting them in the major spotlight, people like WCW or WWE picked them up. Because I think if they would have honestly had normal tryouts or whatever with the bigger companies, they wouldn't have made it, because they really aren't that good. ECW made them look like they were the fucking best. But getting to my 10 top fucking moments in ECW, they're in a random order. I'm going to start at the top. Benoit breaking Sabu's neck. That's a moment I'll never forget. Just seeing it, the way he shot him up in the German and he just landed on his neck. You've seen it. It wasn't cool. Not at all. We got a couple of moments here with Bam Bam Bigelow. One with him bench pressing. He just bench pressed fucking Spike 3 rows, 4 rows deep. Just threw him out of the ring and into the crowd. And the crowd caught him and they body surfed him around. That was just really, really awesome. Bam Bam Bigelow also powerbombing Francine through the stage. Another unheard of thing. You never put your hand on women, let alone powerbombing through the stage. Awesome shit. Shane Douglas tossing the NWA title, in the garbage. Turning East Coast wrestling into Extreme Championship Wrestling. That was awesome. The Sandman crucifixion. Oh my god. Crazy stuff. And it was all about a war over his son. His son wanted to be with Raven and stuff like that. And Kurt Angle was actually in the house that evening. And that turned him away from ECW. You got Joey Styles. Joey Styles, 2 words right there. He was ECW. He was the announced team. He was just simply awesome with yelling catfight or, oh my god, Joey Styles was able to sell the product by himself. Great shit. Joel Gertner, another person, with his introductions, whether it was with the Dudleys or just opening up the show. You know, he was a poet. He was a fucking X-rated poet, but he was fucking great. Joel Gertner made you laugh. Fucking great shit. Beulah telling Raven that she was pregnant with Tommy Dreamer's child because of the feud they had. Oh my god. I remember that. That was, I don't know, I was just shocking as all hell. And Raven didn't know what the hell to do, you know, because here they are, bitter enemies, and his girlfriend or whatever at the same time is knocked out by Tommy Dreamer. Rhino goring Sandman's wife through the table. I guess it kind of goes with Francine getting powerbombed, but again, unheard of, you know, non-wrestler, you know, getting gored through a table. Enough said in that moment. And the last one is Tommy Dreamer taking all the cane shots from Sandman and asking for more. You know, he's handcuffed, he was on his hands and knees and just getting beat. And he just kept, "Can I have another, sir?" And it was just amazing stuff. But anyways, this video's gone on far too long. Just remember, ECW forever. Leave comments about your favorite moments or favorite wrestlers. If you liked the ECW, if you were around when ECW was around, you know, whatever, leave a comment, leave a video response. Please like or dislike, comment, as I already said, and please subscribe. Tell your friends. All about me. Yeah, all about me. Wrestling Rants Reviews. And until then, I'll see you on the flip side.